GETTYThe Scottish Conservative leader Ruth Davidson was one of the most prominent Remain campaigners. The Scottish Conservative leader Ruth Davidson was one of the most prominent Remain campaigners during the Brexit referendum, but she has argued that staying in the customs union would not respect the result because it would stop the UK from striking its own trade deals. She is sceptical about Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn's support for the customs union, and says the public is not daft enough to believe him. She said, "Folk aren't daft and they know that yesterday was less about having a workable Brexit and more about trying to bring down a Tory government." The Scottish Tory leader is wary of SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon, who has pledged to return to Holyrood with a new timetable for a second independence referendum. She also warned that the SNP is pressing ahead with its own version of the EU withdrawal bill. Speaking ahead of a Scottish Tory conference in Aberdeen, she said the Scottish no longer view the First Minister as an honest broker on Brexit following her demand last year for another independence referendum. Ms. Davidson said, "It would be remiss of people who've worked incredibly hard to keep our country together and make the arguments before the referendum and to honour the result of that referendum afterwards not to be prepared." The conference is scheduled to tackle a series of major developments on Brexit. There have been questions raised about Ms. Davidson's influence over the direction of Brexit. After last week, 3 Scottish MPs has signed a letter calling for a clean break with the EU and for full regulatory autonomy, but Ms. Davidson said she is pretty relaxed about the letter and there had been no big blow-up in the party. She said, "We all want to make Brexit work, we all want to see off the SNP attempts to make it fail in order to have a second referendum. And we all want to see off Corbyn's attempt to bring down the UK government." The EU has also proposed to keep Northern Ireland in the customs union because it says there is no other way of avoiding a hard border. Ms. Davidson warned that the SNP is pressing ahead with its own version of the EU withdrawal bill, but Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said this is not required as money is taken invisibly from drivers between Camden and Westminster and pay the congestion charge. When asked about a comparison, the Scottish leader rolled her eyes and said, "I think that was an unfortunate analogy. This is a serious and technical issue that requires serious minds to give it the correct amount of thought. It's not really one for casual disregard, but there is a genuine willingness on both sides to make this work, not just Irish-British but also at the European level." When asked about Boris Johnson raising the prospect of a hard border in a leaked letter to the PM, Ms. Davidson said, "The Prime Minister has been pretty clear on that. She will not countenance it. I believe there will be some hard truths in the Prime Minister's speech on Friday. 2 ultras on both sides about what is achievable and what is fantasy. And the Prime Minister will make those clear. The Prime Minister won't do and will articulate that she won't do anything that will put the sanctity of the United Kingdom in difficulties and will not put a border in the middle of the Irish Sea. That is a line she will not cross." Ms. Davidson said had been firm that any EU regulatory agreement in Northern Ireland to avoid a hard border must apply to the rest of the UK. GETTYThe Scottish leader said Mr. Johnson's analogy was unfortunate. She said the last thing that must happen is a border at the Irish Sea. Ms. Davidson concluded, "There is a genuine willingness on both sides to make this work, not just Irish-British but also at the European level. A deal must make sure the UK comes out stronger and that we don't allow separatists like the SNP to use this to try and break us up."